The air shimmered with an ethereal glow as the alien woman stood on the desolate battlefield, her iridescent skin reflecting the dim light of two suns hanging low in the crimson sky. She was breathtakingly beautiful, though not in ways humans typically understood beauty. Her features were both familiar and profoundly otherworldly. Her elongated limbs moved with a fluid grace that seemed to defy physics, and her eyes, when open, glowed like twin moons suspended in darkness. She had been sent here for one purpose: to serve as a sacrifice. It wasn't uncommon among her kind, the Luminari, to offer themselves willingly in moments of war or desperation. For centuries, they had observed humanity from afar, studying their aggression, their capacity for destruction, and their insatiable hunger, not just for resources but for dominance. The human soldiers were relentless predators, often consuming anything, or anyone, that crossed their path during conquests. This ritualistic act of consumption was seen as both symbolic and practical. It was believed to absorb the essence of what was devoured, granting strength and knowledge. Her people had prepared her meticulously for this moment. They adorned her body with intricate patterns that pulsed faintly with bioluminescent energy, marking her as sacred prey. She wore no clothing; it would only hinder the inevitable, but instead allowed her natural radiance to shine through. Every step she took resonated with purpose, even if each movement pulled at something deep within her chest, a quiet ache she couldn't quite name. Fear? Anticipation? Perhaps both. As she closed her eyes, waiting for the human male soldier to approach, she felt time stretch thin around her. The battlefield was eerily silent now, save for the distant hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of plasma fire fading into the horizon. Her breath came slow and steady, though her heart, if it could be called that, beat erratically beneath layers of translucent flesh. She wondered what he would look like, this creature who would consume her. Would his face twist with malice, or would there be some flicker of hesitation before he acted? But then, nothing happened. No heavy footsteps approached. No shadow loomed over her. Instead, the silence persisted, broken only by the soft rustle of wind stirring the ash-covered ground. Confusion rippled through her mind like waves crashing against an invisible shore. Why hadn't he come? Hadn't her presence been detected? Or worse, had he chosen to ignore her entirely? Slowly, tentatively, she opened her eyes. What she saw made her freeze. He was there, standing several paces away, his weapon lowered at his side. He was tall, broad-shouldered, clad in battle-worn armor smeared with dirt and blood. His helmet obscured most of his face, but she could see enough. A pair of piercing blue eyes staring back at her, wide with shock and something else she couldn't place. Recognition? Curiosity? Whatever it was, it stopped him cold. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The tension between them was palpable, charged with unspoken questions and ancient misunderstandings. Then, without warning, he spoke, not in words she recognized, but in tones that carried meaning beyond language. His voice was rough, layered with exhaustion and disbelief. "You're alive," he said finally, lowering his weapon completely. Alive. The word echoed in her thoughts, unfamiliar yet strangely comforting. Of course she was alive, she had always been alive, but hearing it spoken aloud by someone who might have ended her existence struck a chord within her. Alive meant more than simply existing. It implied value, significance. And yet, why did he seem so surprised? Did he truly believe she was nothing more than an object to be consumed? Before she could process further, he took a cautious step forward. Instinctively, she flinched, bracing herself for the worst. But again, he stopped short, holding up a gloved hand as if to reassure her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he murmured, his tone softer this time. There was sincerity in his voice, though laced with uncertainty. "I don't know what you think is supposed to happen here, but I'm not doing it." Her confusion deepened. Not doing it. What did that mean? Was this some kind of trick, a tactic to make her let down her guard? No, his posture suggested otherwise. He wasn't poised to attack. Instead, he seemed almost conflicted, as if he were wrestling with forces far greater than himself. "Why?" she asked, her own voice emerging as a melodic whisper that carried across the distance between them. To her surprise, he seemed to understand her perfectly, despite their vastly different origins. "Because," He hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I've seen enough death. Enough pain. If there's any chance you can walk away from this, then you should. Her luminous form flickered briefly, betraying the turmoil brewing inside her. Walk away. That wasn't how this was supposed to go. Sacrifice was honor, duty, inevitability. Yet here he stood, denying her the very fate she had prepared for. Denying himself the power he could have gained from her. And yet, she couldn't deny the strange warmth spreading through her core, a sensation foreign yet intoxicating. Hope. Gratitude. She didn't know. All she knew was that the script had changed, and she wasn't sure how to rewrite it. Without another word, the soldier turned and began walking away, leaving her standing alone amidst the ruins of a world torn apart by conflict. But as his figure grew smaller against the backdrop of dying stars, she realized something startling. She didn't want him to leave. Not because she feared being left behind, but because, for the first time in her life, she wanted answers. Answers about him. About herself. About everything. And so, driven by a newfound determination, she followed him into the unknown. The landscape shifted as they moved farther from the battlefield, transitioning from barren wasteland to dense forests bathed in perpetual twilight. The trees here were unlike anything she had ever encountered, their trunks glowing faintly with veins of phosphorescent light that pulsed in rhythm with the planet's heartbeat. Strange creatures darted between the shadows, their movements swift and silent, watching curiously as the unlikely pair passed by. She kept her distance at first, wary of drawing too close to the human soldier. Despite his earlier reassurances, trust was not something easily given, especially when survival instincts screamed caution. Yet, as hours stretched into what felt like days, she found herself inching closer, drawn by an inexplicable pull she couldn't resist. He noticed, of course. How could he not? Her radiant form stood out starkly against the muted hues of the forest, impossible to miss even in the dim light. Occasionally, he would glance over his shoulder, those piercing blue eyes locking onto hers with a mixture of curiosity and guardedness. Each time their gazes met, she felt a jolt run through her, an electric connection that defied logic and reason. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of silent trekking, he stopped near a clearing where a stream of crystalline water flowed gently over smooth stones. Dropping his pack to the ground, he knelt beside the water and cupped his hands, drinking deeply before splashing some onto his face. Only then did he turn to face her fully, his expression unreadable. "You're still following me," he stated matter-of-factly, his voice tinged with both amusement and exasperation. "Yes," she replied simply, stepping into the clearing. Her bare feet made no sound against the mossy earth, though every movement seemed deliberate, calculated. "You spared me. Now I wish to understand why." His brow furrowed slightly, as if weighing whether to answer honestly or dismiss her outright. After a pause, he sighed and gestured toward a fallen log nearby, inviting her to sit. Hesitant but intrigued, she complied, settling gracefully onto the damp wood while maintaining a respectful distance. "My name is Eric," he began, leaning back against a tree trunk with a weary sigh. "I'm not proud of what I've done in this war. Killing, destroying, it's all part of the job, you know? But sometimes I wonder if we're fighting for the right reasons. If any of this is worth the cost." His words hung heavily in the air, carrying weight far beyond their surface meaning. She tilted her head, studying him intently. "You speak of doubt," she observed, her voice soft yet probing. "Is that why you refuse to consume me?" Eric chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "Partly. But also because, well, look at you. You're not just some resource to be harvested. You're real. Sentient. And whatever your people told you about us, about our nature, maybe it's not the whole truth." Her luminous eyes widened slightly at his admission. Real. The word echoed in her mind once more, stirring emotions she hadn't realized she possessed. If she was real, then did that mean her choices mattered? Her existence held intrinsic value beyond the role assigned to her? "But why does it matter?" she pressed, her tone tinged with frustration. "Your kind has taken countless lives in pursuit of power. Why should mine be any different?" "Because I've seen enough suffering," Eric replied sharply, his gaze hardening. Enough lives wasted for nothing. I won't be part of that anymore, not if I can help it. Silence fell between them again, thick and contemplative. She watched as he stared off into the distance, lost in thoughts she couldn't begin to fathom. There was pain etched into his features, scars both visible and unseen. Pain that mirrored her own in ways she hadn't anticipated. "What will you do now?" she asked softly, breaking the quiet. "Will you return to your people? Continue the fight?" Eric hesitated, his jaw tightening as he considered her question. "I don't know," he admitted. "Going back means becoming part of the machine again. Staying out here, it's dangerous. For both of us." Her heart, if it could be called that, skipped a beat. Both of us. The implication lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. In sparing her life, he had unwittingly bound their fates together, intertwining their destinies in ways neither could foresee. As night began to fall, casting the forest in shades of deep indigo and silver, she realized something profound. The story she had been told about humans, their brutality, their insatiable greed, was incomplete. Just as Eric questioned the truths he had been fed about her kind, she too must confront the possibility that her understanding of the universe was flawed. And so, under the watchful gaze of twin moons rising above the treetops, they sat together in uneasy alliance, two beings from vastly different worlds united by a shared desire to seek answers, and perhaps redemption, in a galaxy torn apart by war. Days turned into weeks as the alien woman and Eric continued their journey through the untamed wilderness, navigating treacherous terrain and evading patrols from both human forces and remnants of her own kind. Their bond, fragile at first, began to deepen with each passing day, forged in the crucible of shared adversity. Conversations became less formal, more intimate, as they exchanged fragments of their lives, stories of loss, longing, and hope. For her, these conversations were revelatory. She learned of Earth, a distant blue-green orb teeming with life yet plagued by division and strife. Eric spoke of its beauty and brutality with equal fervor, painting vivid pictures of towering cities and sprawling oceans, of humanity's capacity for creation and destruction. In turn, she shared glimpses of her homeworld, Lumina, a realm of perpetual light where harmony reigned supreme until the encroachment of war shattered their peace. Her people, the Luminari, revered balance above all else, believing themselves stewards of universal equilibrium. Yet, in their quest to maintain order, they had embraced rituals of sacrifice that blurred the line between altruism and complicity. One evening, as they rested beside a bubbling geothermal spring, she posed a question that had lingered in her mind since their initial encounter. "Do you regret sparing me?" Her voice was barely above a whisper, trembling with vulnerability. Eric looked up from the small fire he had built, his expression thoughtful. "Regret isn't the right word," he said after a pause. "What I did, it challenged everything I thought I knew about myself, about my mission. But no, I don't regret it. How could I, when meeting you has made me question so much?" Her luminous form flickered faintly, betraying the storm of emotions swirling within her. Questioning one's beliefs was dangerous territory, especially for someone like her, whose identity had been shaped by centuries of tradition and expectation. Yet, there was a strange comfort in knowing that Eric grappled with similar doubts, that he too walked a precarious path between duty and defiance. As their journey progressed, signs of pursuit grew increasingly frequent. Scorch marks marred the trees where plasma bolts had narrowly missed their mark, and the distant hum of reconnaissance drones became a constant reminder of the danger lurking just beyond the horizon. Neither dared to speak openly about what would happen if they were caught, but the unspoken fear lingered like a shadow over their every move. It was during one such tense moment, as they huddled in the hollowed-out roots of an ancient tree to avoid detection, that Eric revealed a secret he had kept hidden until now. "There's something you need to know," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind rustling through the leaves. "I wasn't just a soldier. I was part of a special unit tasked with eliminating threats. People like you." Her breath hitched, though she forced herself to remain still. "And yet, you chose differently," she murmured, her glowing eyes locking onto his. "Why?" He hesitated, his fingers tracing idle patterns in the dirt. "Because I started seeing patterns. Connections. The orders we received never added up. They were designed to escalate conflicts, not resolve them. Someone higher up wants this war to continue, no matter the cost. And I refuse to be a pawn in their game. Her heart ached with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. Here was a man willing to risk everything, not just his life, but his sense of belonging, to stand against systems far larger than himself. It was a courage she barely recognized in her own reflections, let alone in someone from a species she had been taught to fear. But courage alone could not shield them forever. One night, as they camped near the edge of a jagged cliff overlooking a vast canyon, disaster struck. A patrol of Luminari warriors descended upon them without warning, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Eric reacted instinctively, shoving her behind a rocky outcrop as plasma fire erupted around them. "Stay down!" he shouted, returning fire with precise bursts from his rifle. But the numbers were against him. Wave after wave of attackers surged forward, their glowing forms cutting through the darkness like specters of vengeance. Summoning every ounce of resolve, she stepped out from cover, her bioluminescent markings flaring brightly in defiance. "Stop!" she commanded, her voice resonating with authority. The warriors faltered, momentarily stunned by her presence. "This one is under my protection," she declared, placing herself squarely between them and Eric. "Harm him, and you harm me." The standoff lasted mere seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, the leader of the patrol, a towering figure clad in ceremonial armor, spoke. "You shame yourself, sister. Sacrifice is sacred. By protecting this human, you betray our people." Her response was firm, unwavering. "Perhaps. But I choose to believe there is another way. One that does not require endless bloodshed." With a snarl of frustration, the warriors withdrew, disappearing into the night as swiftly as they had arrived. Breathing heavily, she turned back to Eric, who regarded her with a mixture of awe and concern. "You didn't have to do that," he said quietly, his voice tinged with guilt. "They could have killed you." She smiled faintly, her luminescence softening. "And yet, here we are. Still alive. Still choosing." Their respite was short-lived. As dawn broke over the canyon, revealing its breathtaking expanse of red rock and cascading waterfalls, they discovered tracks leading away from their position. Tracks that belonged to human mercenaries hired to hunt deserters like Eric. The message was clear: nowhere was safe. Bound by circumstance and choice, the two fugitives pressed onward, their destination uncertain but their resolve unshaken. Together, they sought refuge in the unknown, guided by a fragile hope that somewhere, somehow, they might find a place where their differences ceased to divide them and began to unite. Yet, as they ventured deeper into the uncharted reaches of the galaxy, whispers of a greater conspiracy began to surface. Rumors of a shadowy organization pulling strings from behind the scenes, manipulating events to ensure perpetual conflict. If true, it meant their struggles were far from over, and that the answers they sought might come at a price neither was prepared to pay. Beneath the canopy of an alien jungle, where sunlight filtered through dense foliage in fractured beams, the air hummed with anticipation. The alien woman and Eric paused, their senses heightened by the eerie stillness surrounding them. Somewhere ahead lay the coordinates of a rumored sanctuary, a neutral zone whispered about in fragmented transmissions intercepted during their travels. It was a place where beings from warring factions could coexist, free from the chains of allegiance and animosity. But reaching it required traversing territory claimed by both sides, a gauntlet of peril they had no choice but to endure. Her luminous form flickered subtly as she scanned their surroundings, attuned to vibrations in the environment that eluded human perception. "We're being watched," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the symphony of chirping insects and rustling leaves. Eric nodded grimly, his grip tightening on his weapon. "I know." He glanced at her, noting the subtle shifts in her bioluminescent patterns, a language he was beginning to decipher. "Can you tell how many?" She shook her head, her elongated fingers brushing against the bark of a nearby tree. "Too many. They're scattered, blending with the shadows." Her glowing eyes narrowed. "Not just one faction. Both." Eric cursed under his breath. Ambushes were common in contested zones, but encountering mixed forces was rare and ominous. It suggested coordination, a level of cooperation that shouldn't exist between sworn enemies. His mind raced, piecing together fragments of intel gathered during their journey. Could this be evidence of the shadowy organization they suspected? Or something even more sinister? "We need to keep moving," he said finally, his voice low but urgent. "If we stay here, we're sitting ducks." She agreed silently, falling into step beside him as they navigated the labyrinthine jungle. Every step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the knowledge that unseen eyes tracked their every move. The tension between them was palpable, yet it carried a strange intimacy, a shared understanding born of survival. Hours passed, each moment stretching into eternity. The jungle seemed endless, its vibrant colors muted by the oppressive weight of impending confrontation. Then, without warning, the ambush came. Plasma bolts seared through the air, striking trees and igniting bursts of flame. Eric reacted instantly, diving behind cover while returning fire with practiced precision. Beside him, the alien woman moved with fluid grace, her body weaving through the chaos as if guided by an unseen force. Her hands emitted pulses of energy, deflecting attacks and creating brief openings for escape. "Fall back!" Eric shouted, gesturing toward a narrow ravine that offered temporary shelter. She obeyed, her movements synchronized with his as they retreated into the rocky crevice. Panting, they crouched low, listening as the sounds of pursuit faded into the distance. For a moment, neither spoke, their breathing ragged and hearts pounding in unison. Then, slowly, she reached out, her cool fingertips brushing against his armored forearm. "You fought well," she said softly, her melodic voice soothing despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "So did you," he replied, offering a weak smile. "Guess we make a pretty good team." Her lips curved upward faintly, though her glowing eyes remained somber. "Yes. But for how long?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. Both knew the risks they faced, the odds stacked against them. Yet, amid the uncertainty, a spark of defiance burned brightly within them, a refusal to surrender to despair. As dusk settled over the jungle, casting long shadows across the ravine, they resumed their journey, guided by the faint hope of sanctuary. Along the way, they encountered others, refugees, deserters, survivors, all fleeing the same endless cycle of violence. Some joined their group, drawn by the promise of safety. Others vanished into the wilderness, preferring solitude to solidarity. Through it all, the alien woman and Eric remained steadfast, their bond growing stronger with each challenge overcome. Conversations turned philosophical, delving into questions of morality, identity, and purpose. They debated the nature of sacrifice, the ethics of survival, the possibility of redemption. Each discussion brought them closer, blurring the lines between ally and confidant, protector and protected. One night, as they rested beneath a canopy of stars, she turned to him with a look of quiet determination. "When we reach the sanctuary," she began, her voice steady despite the turmoil within, "what will you do?" Eric stared into the fire, its flickering light casting shadows across his weathered face. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe try to expose the truth. Find allies willing to fight for change. Or maybe disappear. Start over." "And you?" he asked, meeting her gaze. "What will you do?" Her luminous form shimmered faintly, as if struggling to contain the emotions surging within. "I want to believe there's a future beyond this war," she said softly. "A world where beings like us aren't defined by the roles thrust upon us. Where choices matter more than destiny." Eric reached out, his hand covering hers in a gesture of solidarity. "Then let's build that world together," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes." In that moment, surrounded by the remnants of a fractured galaxy, they made a silent vow, a commitment to defy the odds, to challenge the systems that sought to define them, and to forge a new path illuminated by hope rather than hatred. But the road ahead remained fraught with danger, and the whispers of conspiracy grew louder with each passing day. Shadows loomed large, threatening to engulf them, yet they pressed onward, driven by a shared belief that even in the darkest corners of the universe, light could prevail. As dawn broke on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, they emerged from the jungle and set their sights on the distant silhouette of the sanctuary. With every step, they carried not just their own hopes and dreams, but the aspirations of countless others yearning for peace in a war-torn galaxy. The sanctuary loomed before them, a sprawling structure carved into the side of a mountain, its crystalline walls shimmering like frozen sunlight. It was both alien and familiar, a paradoxical blend of organic curves and geometric precision that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The air around it vibrated with an almost imperceptible hum, as if the very fabric of reality bent to accommodate its presence. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the alien woman and Eric allowed themselves a moment of quiet awe. But their relief was short-lived. As they approached the towering entrance, flanked by intricate carvings depicting scenes of unity and coexistence, a figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, and radiating authority. Their face was obscured beneath a hood, but their voice carried weight, commanding attention without effort. "You are not welcome here," the figure intoned, raising a hand to halt their advance. "This is a place of neutrality, not refuge for fugitives." Eric stepped forward, his posture tense but resolute. "We're not looking for asylum," he said, his tone measured yet firm. "We seek answers. About the war. About why it never ends." The figure tilted their heads slightly, curiosity flickering beneath their stoic exterior. "And what makes you believe we hold those answers?" "Because someone does," the alien woman interjected, her bioluminescent markings pulsing faintly with determination. "Someone has been pulling strings, orchestrating this conflict for reasons beyond comprehension. If there's any place left where truth can be found, it's here." For a long moment, the figure regarded them in silence, weighing their words. Then, with a slow nod, they stepped aside, gesturing toward the entrance. "Very well. Enter. But know this, the truths you seek may not bring peace, they may only deepen your despair." With cautious steps, the two crossed the threshold, leaving behind the chaos of the outside world and stepping into a realm unlike anything they had ever encountered. The interior of the sanctuary was vast, filled with beings of every conceivable form, some humanoid, others utterly alien. They moved about in quiet harmony, their interactions marked by mutual respect and understanding. It was a stark contrast to the hostility they had grown accustomed to, a glimpse of what could be if hatred were set aside. A guide led them through winding corridors adorned with murals depicting moments of cooperation across species and civilizations. At last, they arrived at a chamber bathed in soft, golden light. In its center stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline orb pulsating with rhythmic energy. The guide gestured for them to approach. "This is the Nexus," the guide explained. "It holds fragments of knowledge collected over millennia. Ask your questions, and it will reveal what it can." Eric and the alien woman exchanged glances, their shared resolve unspoken but palpable. Together, they stepped forward, placing their hands on the orb. A surge of energy coursed through them, flooding their minds with images, voices, and memories, not their own, but of countless others who had come before. They saw the origins of the war, not as a clash of ideologies or resources, but as a calculated experiment. A shadowy organization known only as the Architects had manipulated events across galaxies, sowing discord to study the effects of prolonged conflict on sentient life. Wars became laboratories, each battle a data point in their quest to understand the limits of resilience, creativity, and destruction. Worse still, they discovered that neither humans nor Luminari were unique in their suffering. Countless species had been pitted against one another, their histories rewritten, their cultures weaponized. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen under the unseen hand of the Architects, their struggles reduced to variables in a grand equation. As the visions faded, Eric staggered back, his face pale with shock. Beside him, the alien woman trembled, her luminous form dimmed by the weight of revelation. "All this time," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Our sacrifices, our wars, they were meaningless." "No," Eric countered sharply, gripping her shoulders. "Not meaningless. Painful, yes. Unjust, absolutely. But not meaningless. We've seen the truth now. That gives us power, the power to stop them." Her glowing eyes met his, searching for the conviction in his words. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we must act. Together." Their decision ignited a chain reaction. Armed with the knowledge gleaned from the Nexus, they rallied allies within the sanctuary, beings disillusioned by the cycle of violence, eager to reclaim their autonomy. Plans were forged, strategies devised, and networks established to spread awareness across galaxies. The architect's grip on the universe began to weaken as whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire. Yet, the cost was high. Betrayals cut deep, losses mounted, and doubts crept in during the darkest hours. There were nights when Eric questioned whether they could truly win, whether exposing the architects of war would change anything. And there were moments when the alien woman wondered if peace was even possible after so much devastation. But through it all, they held fast to each other, drawing strength from their shared purpose. Their bond transcended differences, becoming a beacon of hope for those who dared to dream of a better future. In the end, victory came not with a single decisive blow, but through countless small acts of defiance. Networks of resistance dismantled the architects' operations piece by piece, exposing their schemes to the galaxy. Worlds once divided found common ground, united by the realization that their struggles were not isolated but interconnected. When the final stronghold of the architects fell, crumbling under the combined efforts of a coalition unlike any seen before, Eric and the alien woman stood side by side, watching as the dust settled. Around them, cheers erupted, tears flowed, and embraces were shared. Yet, amidst the celebration, they remained silent, their gazes locked on the horizon. "What now?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with both exhaustion and anticipation. Eric smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "Now, we rebuild. Not just worlds, but trust, hope, maybe even love." Her luminescent form brightened, casting a warm glow over the scene. "Love," she repeated, testing the word as if it were new. "Yes. Let's try that." Together, they turned away from the ruins of the past and walked into the dawn of a new era. An era defined not by fear or hatred, but by the courage to choose differently. Though scars remained, reminders of battles fought and lives lost, they carried with them the unwavering belief that even in the darkest corners of the universe, light could prevail. And so, hand in hand, they ventured forth, ready to shape a future where choices mattered more than destiny, where unity triumphed over division, and where the beauty of existence lay not in perfection, but in the endless potential for growth and renewal.